Go. We got everybody in. Hi, welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday, morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are joining us from in the world today. We are so happy to see you. My name is Meg Alexander, and I'm part of Power to Fly's hosting team, and I cannot wait to bring you to this amazing chat and learn guest that we have lined up for you today. Now, before I do that, I just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items with y'all. Especially important if, maybe this is your first Power to Fly event, in which case, hi, welcome. We're so happy to see you. Or maybe you are a frequent flyer with Power to Fly, but it might have been a couple, months or weeks or whatever since you've, gone on an event with us. So just so that you all know, all of these events are about you. And this one especially is about you. And we want to encourage that participation because you took time out of your day to be here with us live. So we want to make sure it is worth your while to spend time with great companies like Power to Fly and Plex. Now, to that end, you are highly encouraged to participate. There's a couple different options if you would like to do so. We encourage you to turn your cameras on if you would like to. I'm always happy and excited to see new faces, especially when we get a chance to share our smiling, maskless faces safely. There is no pressure to be Instagram perfect, y'all. We do not care if you are coming to us from a corner office or your living room couch. It makes no difference to us. We just want to be there and meet you where you are. So if you do want to turn your cameras on, great. If you don't want to, totally fine. No worries either way. If you have any kind of privacy concerns or anything, totally understood. Just know that as long as you don't come off mute today, you will not show up on the live stream or the recording of today's session. Now, like I said, like I just said, today's session is being recorded. And what that means for you is that you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, listen to the conversation that Ashley and I are going to have, ask your questions, and get to take in this whole event. You can always go back and rewatch the recording later. In about 1 to 2 business days, so probably by Friday this week, Power to Fly will send out an email to everyone who registered for today's event. And that email is going to have a link to where you can rewatch this recording once it's posted on our website. Now, let's say that Ashley shares something like completely mind-blowing. It's amazing. You cannot wait to share it with a friend or a coworker or a relative. You don't have to wait those 1 to 2 business days. We are live streaming to our YouTube channel right now. Hi, YouTube. And I just want to encourage y'all, I'll share links for all of this in the chat in a few minutes, but check out our YouTube channel. We will post the live stream there. The live stream is usually posted to the channel within about 5 to 15 minutes at the end of the stream. So you can always head over there and grab this link and send it wherever you would like. But you can also search a huge section of our recorded chats on that YouTube channel as well. Obviously, we have the full archives on our website. They're incredibly useful, entirely free, but just depends on where you would rather access this kind of stuff. Now, the other thing I missed to tell y'all is if you don't want to participate via your camera, you can still participate via the chat. So if you've got questions that you want to make sure that we ask our speaker today, send them in the chat. If you submitted a question, you're not sure if we're going to get to it, send it in. If you have a question while we're listening to something that Ashley is telling us, we want to know what you want to know. My whole job is to get answers to your questions, and I can't do that if I don't know what y'all want to hear about. So as we get going, just know that you are always welcome to share questions at any time. Put them into the Zoom group chat. And if you would like to, you are always welcome to DM me and send in your question that way. I will keep you anonymous, and yeah, no worries there. Now, I do encourage y'all to keep up with us on our various social media platforms. I did say we are on, we're on let's see, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and no, that's it. Instagram. Yeah. So, so we're on those various channels. You can always find us. Our handle is @PowerToFly. And something that I want to share with y'all is part of our mission is to fast track, gender equality, pay equity, true representation in the workforce. And one of the ways we want to do that is by sharing our resources, which are totally free, to as many people as possible. And we're hoping that you might want to help us with that. So if you are here and you are loving, what you're learning with us or loving these programs, if you could take photos or video as we go and share it out to your social network. Let people know that you are learning with Power to Fly and Plex today. We would love to reshare, retweet, repost whatever you'd like to share. So feel free to @ us. You can tag us. We use our hashtag Power to Fly. But we want to do everything we can to get these free resources in the hands of as many people as possible. So if y'all want to do that for us, we would love to have y'all, help us grow the community. Now, I'm very excited to introduce our speaker, but before we do, I just want to tell y'all that Ashley is here today on behalf of Plex. Now, I'll be sharing a link with y'all in a little bit to where you can check out Plex's company page on powertofly.com, but it's going to look like what you're seeing in front of you. Now, all right, there's y'all's link to the page. From this page, this is where you can learn more about Plex. You can check out their open roles and search those. You can check out events. So that's, previous things that they have partnered on with us, as well as upcoming events that they have scheduled. And as always, you can always check you can always search and apply for jobs right from this page as well. Now, if you are listening in to today's conversation and you are interested in Plex, maybe you are interested and you're actively seeking a job, absolutely, I recommend that if you want to set yourself, kind of give yourself the best chance of being noticed by these hiring companies, click that big pink follow button at the top right-hand corner of that company page. It says, it's big, it's pink, it says follow. Clicking that puts you on Plex's follow network. It does some great things for you, but effectively it works like your friend who works at Plex. So it's going to let Plex know that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out a job application. But it also allows us to take some of the grind off of you, to keep Plex on your radar by letting you know when they post new roles. So hopefully we can kind of take some of the slog out of the job search for you. And even if you are interested in Plex, but maybe not actively seeking, I still recommend you click that follow button. It's a great way to give yourself kind of a short list of companies that you are interested in, that you've heard of, that sound cool to you. It's a really good way to give yourself that short list, so when you do start looking, you're not kind of starting from square one. So just let y'all know about those features. All right. So last but not least, so our speaker who's going to join us today is Ashley Llewellyn. Now, Ashley is an Apple engineer who works on the iOS and tvOS apps at Plex. Now, Ashley is part of the team that is focused on helping Plex users build a bigger and better media watching community. She also co-hosts SisterCodes, which is a podcast and a YouTube channel with her sister, where they talk about their journeys as software engineers in tech. So Ashley, I'm really excited to welcome you to the stage. Is there anything else that you think our audience should know about you, or you want to share with them before we dive in today?
No, I think that's it. You covered all of it, and I'm super excited to chat today.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and we will highlight our fabulous speaker here. All right, so we had a bunch of questions that got written in, and so we're going to start with those. But again, just remember, y'all, you took the time to be here with us live, so we want to reward you for that. If you've got questions, send them in anytime from now till the end of the call. We would love to get your questions and get you answers. All right, so let's talk about mentorship. This is one of the key things that a lot of people have talked about in terms of professional growth. And obviously, this audience is not only geared towards people in tech, but also people of color in tech. So within that kind of window into it, what role or what factor do you think that mentorship has played in your own professional development?
So I think it's super important to have good mentors. So at my previous company, they basically had like a mentorship program already set up. So I was assigned like 2 mentors, which is really nice if your company does do something like that. But I know that's not always traditional. So I think it's really important to not only have mentors who have maybe gone through the same experiences as you have. So for example, like for me, looking for like a female staff engineer or something like that. But I think it's also important to have mentors who maybe like don't look like you as well, because they just approach like problems differently. Maybe they have like a more direct approach that to me would feel like, I don't know, braggy or something like that. But it's actually really good to hear, and it's good to like get that feedback too. So yeah, it's played a very big role in my like career development. And currently I am a junior iOS engineer and I work directly with a staff engineer. So that's really great for me because I've learned so much from him just, in the past like couple, months that I've been at Plex too.
I very much love that advice. It is it is important to see people that look like you, right? To see people that you can relate to, or that you want to kind of follow in their footsteps. And you're right. I mean, it is incredibly valuable to have somebody that knows what you're going through, that has been there before you, or, you know, is also going through it. And so it really, I love that advice to kind of diversify your mentorship portfolio, as it were, and, you know, look for that help and that support, not only from people who you want to be like, but also people that have a completely different style than you do, have a different background, have a different kind of take on the industry, or on, you know, the choices that you are faced with.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever had anything that have you ever had a point where you in hindsight, you kind of wish you had talked to a mentor about like a change you were considering, or something like that, you know, you didn't have the opportunity to talk to a mentor, or, you know, utilize that advice?
Honestly, my sister is like quite a big mentor for me, because she's 2 years older than me, and we've followed basically like the same path into software engineering. And so honestly, most of the times I will go to her for advice, because like I trust her, and yeah,
That's
but
awesome.
also, like at my previous job and now, when I go through challenging like situations, I think I do a pretty good job of like reaching out and asking for advice and just like different perspectives, because I think that's also important. And also that's just kind of who I am as a person. Like I like to collect a lot of different like points, and then make a decision from there.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. All right. So let's talk about looking for mentors. A lot of people are unsure about how to look for them, how you should approach them. And what I hear most frequently, and, you know, y'all let me know in the chat here, I want to know if this is true or not. What I have heard a lot from attendees is that they feel like it has to be a very formal thing, and they're not sure how to create that situation, or ask for that help or support. And if y'all agree with this, if this is something you've also, you know, felt when you're trying to find a mentor, give me a +1 in the chat. I want to know if this has been your experience, or maybe it's changing. So what was it like for you? You know, when you are going to look for a mentor, what are some of the things that you did?
So specifically what I was kind of, like I said, I was assigned the first two. So it was kind of just like, okay, they're assigned. But I would say it's really important to look for someone that's maybe in a position that you would eventually like to reach. So like if you're looking to be like a staff software engineer, maybe look for someone like that. And yeah, I don't think it has to be super formal, but I do think it's important to note that like your time is valuable, but also the person that you potentially want to be your mentor, their time is really valuable. Some people just don't have like the time or capacity, even if you connect really well and you think like this person could help me like grow a lot, and I think that we could both give something to each other. Sometimes they just like don't have the time or capacity. So I think it's important to also ask, like, maybe not on the first time you meet them, you don't have to be like, do you want to be my mentor? But, you know, after like a couple meetings, just making sure that you're not, you know, taking up their time if they don't have it available.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's very interesting advice. Now, so if you were trying to find mentors now, where do you think you would start? If you know, kind of took a look at your, let's, for lack of a better term, like took a look at your roster and see you kind of have a gap somewhere. What are some of the ways that you would go about looking for a mentor at this stage of your career?
Honestly, if we're just looking at like my company right now, like if we're just looking at Plex, I would probably go to one of my like people that I work a lot with, which is the staff software engineer who's also on my team, or maybe even my manager, and say like, I'm kind of looking for this, and see if they know anybody that kind of fits those qualifications, because maybe I don't know someone, but they do, that would be like perfect for that kind of role. So I think like utilizing your network and things like that is very helpful in that kind of situation.
Yeah. And you know what, something I was kind of like thinking back through while you were answering, you know, you talked about having your sister as a mentor. And I think that that's something really important for people to know. You know, we've talked about this on past chats, like mentors don't have to be someone who is super, you know, far and above advanced, you know, in your same field. You know, you can learn things from people who are your coworkers, people who are, you know, report to you. You know, it's something we talk about a lot, especially in like ageism chats, about like, you don't just have to be mentored by people who are above you, like, you know, or further along the path. So I think that's really, I love that idea, right? You have your sister, so there's that personal connection, you know, that you trust her judgment. But yeah, I think that that's also really awesome that like, yeah, she's 2 years ahead of you, but effectively you're still kind of going through this roughly at the same pace.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really cool. Do you think she gets jealous that you kind of get the benefit of her experience?
Probably, because I'm sure she would have really liked to have someone, like 2 years ahead of her in her career. But yeah, I was also going to say off that same point that my mentor back at my old company told me too that she got a lot out of our conversations because she was seeing like my side of it too. So I think there should be on both sides, like it shouldn't just be take, there should be like give and take on both sides. So
Oh yeah, of course.
yeah.
All right, so we are getting some questions in the chat, and I'm gonna keep, kind of keep feathering those in as they fit within our discussion. So please keep sending them in, y'all. Somebody wrote in asking, do you have any advice for people just starting out in their software engineering career? It sounds like most of your mentors have been found within your company, but I'm curious how to do this when I'm in the middle of job searching. So, okay, so let's say that you're just on the path to getting your software engineering career started. What do you think people need to be thinking of in terms of mentorship? Is this something that you can go after reasonably if you're still in process, or do you think it's something you should wait on until you're in the industry?
Oh, I feel like that's really tough because I feel like obviously it'd be so valuable at that stage to have a mentor because they could tell you, like you could talk them through like, oh, which companies I'm applying to and, is this seem like a good fit and things like that. But I also know that it was really hard for me after I graduated college. I didn't have like mentors set up because there's no formal process like that. I know that some people did have like really good relationships with professors and stuff. And so in a way they were like almost mentors for them. But no, yeah, I think it's really tricky. I don't know if there are like programs set up through Grace Hopper and things like that, but I'm sure there has to be something out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think I'd absolutely like encourage y'all if you know of anything, please share it in the chat. I always like that we have the opportunity to learn from each other on these chats. So if you found one or if you got a suggestion for this, please feel free to send it in the chat. And you know what, honestly, it does sound like something that would be super helpful, and I think it kind of dovetails nicely with what you were saying about approaching people for mentorship. If you're interested in learning from them and you kind of have an idea of what support you might need or where you think you might need guidance, like ask them that. Hey, I'm new to this, I'm new to the field. I'm trying to get my software engineering career started. You have had a really great career arc, and I'd like to be able to find out how you did a couple things. What was it like when you got started? That kind of stuff. There are a lot of people sharing that they find mentorship on LinkedIn, and that is a huge 100% on that. That is a huge source of people finding mentors. And keep in mind, they don't have to be, it's not like you just need one, and it's not like you have to like talk to them for hours a day, every week or something. Like it's, you can really kind of make this what you need of it, like try and figure out what support you need and then see if they can give you that. All right, so a lot of, obviously, like the overarching theme of today's session is looking at this field through the lens of people of color. So based on your experience, when you think about a safe and inclusive workplace culture, which is something that we want everybody to be building towards, what does that look like for you?
Okay, so I was thinking about this question. I think one thing that's really important is it's more of like a feeling than something that's quantifiable, but it's like, do you feel included? Like, do you feel like your opinion is valued? Do you feel like your voice is heard? And things like that are kind of hard to, like I said, like kind of hard to quantify, but it's more of a feeling that you get from your like teammates and your peers. So I think that's definitely extremely important.
Have you ever walked into a situation and had that sort of spidey sense of like, this isn't optimal?
Yeah, no, definitely. Unfortunately, yeah. I think also it's kind of hard because when you're like a more junior software engineer as well, I think bits of imposter syndrome also creep up because you're like, I don't know as much as everybody else here in this room. And then it can make you feel like, oh, I don't belong here, which is not true. Like everybody has to start somewhere. And obviously everyone starts at the bottom. Like that's just how it goes. But yeah, definitely, unfortunately, had those experiences. I was going to talk a little bit about how it's really great that Plex is 100% remote. And so because it is 100% remote, I think you're involved in a lot more like meetings, and there's a lot more like equality in meetings because you're all just there like in the room, versus I think in a traditional like office sense, you might have like after work drinks that like a bunch of guys go to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, you're not included in those, and conversations do happen about work, and like decisions are kind of maybe not made, but like conversations are had, and then you're excluded from those like automatically. So yeah.
I like that. I kind of like that take on it, that it is something that we talked about, especially like kind of at the start of the pandemic, was, talking to people who either had never been remote before, or companies, orgs, industries that thought that they could not go remote, was, kind of trying to talk people over this hurdle of, it's not harder, it's just different to plan. So you're right. When you are setting up a meeting for everyone who's 100% remote, you have to think who you want to invite to the meeting, because nobody's going to just be walking down the hall and you think, oh yeah, Matt would be great for this, let's pull him in. So, I think that's a really good point, that it is something that maybe is a little bit less of a factor for an 100% remote workforce, or at least maybe not quite as like aggressive, maybe, I guess, like in your face, like you do have that benefit of geographical space, to kind of like help you out there. I like that. Okay, so let's kind of talk our way around the interview process of kind of moving into software engineering. What types of questions should people ask during the interview process to get a deeper understanding of the company's culture? I think we've all been in these, been in interviews, or heard this, kind of the shtick from the HR person or whoever the recruiter is about like, we're all just a big family and everything's great. But like when you are going into interviews and having to, kind of suss this out, what do you look for? What are some of the things that you've asked that have helped you to gauge this in the past?
Yeah. So I think it's hard to just ask a question and be like, what is the company culture? Because people don't really know what to respond to, and it's super vague. So I like to ask questions specifically about the team. And I think getting like further into it, I like to ask like, how many female engineers are on the team? Like, are you looking to hire more, like specifically around diversity, if that's something that's important to you and you want to feel like included, which I think everybody does. And then you can also ask like, are there more like mid to upper female engineers at the company? Because you also want to see that people are getting promoted, and you want to see like the growth there, and that people at a higher level, like their opinions are also valued and they're there and, working well. So yeah, lots of questions about the team. And I think honestly, you can kind of get a gauge on what people's like opinions are, even if you just ask a question about diversity. If they get like really defensive, or they're like, it's already like a bit of a red flag, because you're like, oh, well, that's not great. Yeah.
Well, it's something we talk about a lot on these chats, is like, you are interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. So, I love what you said about like, ask the questions and pay attention to the answers, like the substance of the answers. Yes. But also pay attention to like how they're answering it. If you ask about ERGs and they don't currently have any, are they talking about it in the way of like, oh, it's so great that that's something that you're interested in. We would, we don't have anything currently, but it sounds like something that'd be great. Maybe you'd want to help us with, or start, spearheading or whatever, versus like tight-lipped one-word answer, we really wish you would move on to another subject, like sort of tone, and I feel like that comes across for everybody. Actually, Jeff is asking a really good question in the chat about why is that a red flag? So let's talk about that. Like if you are hearing from, from somebody, from a recruiter or hiring manager or whatever, and you are asking these questions and getting the kind of like no or one word or responses like that, what does that mean for you? Like if somebody in the room right now has never had that perspective as a person of color, what's going through your mind when you're hearing these kinds of things?
Well, the first thing is that it's just like not important to them, or at least not important to that person. And it obviously depends on like who you're talking to in the interview process. But like, for example, if it's a peer that you're going to be working directly with and they just like skate over it, or they're like, oh, that's whatever, I'm sure they exist out there somewhere, then it's like, clearly they don't care about that. It's not like a focus for them. And then that can make you feel like maybe it's not going to be like as important. If I need support or I need whatever, then they won't really care about it. So I think that's why it's like a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And just in case, I'm reading back through the chat. So just in case that question was less about why are those kinds of answers a red flag and more about what was in there. Matt had typed, we're just like a big family is a red flag for me. So if that was what the question was about, I can absolutely tell you that. And Matt, if you want to jump in, please feel free. For me and my experience, we're like a big family, not always, tends to cause a lot of everybody pitches in all of the time because we're family, and it's sort of it kind of delves into a little bit of like emotional manipulation to get people to like work harder or stay later, do different things, whatever. Not a bad thing, like please, like it's not, people got to work, companies need work done, we get it, but it's something that makes me a little bit more like, if somebody were to start talking about like, we're just a big family here, everybody pitches in, blah, blah, blah. Like my next couple of questions are going to be on work-life balance and what that separation looks like. And how does the company prioritize that? How do they fight burnout or prevent burnout in their staff? Like that's the kind of thing that I would want to hear afterwards that would make it less of a scarlet flag and more like a little bit pink. So that's just for me personally. Matt, how about you? What do you feel the same on this?
Totally. You you took the words out of my mouth. It's 100%. I think if they lead with it, that's the concern from my end. That's always been my concern. I'll say that a company I was with before I joined Plex led with that, and I quickly learned within about 2 weeks that it was a mistake. So I'm not saying everyone, every single company that says that is bad, but it's maybe just something to have a lot of follow-up questions.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to put it. And, Michael is asking in the chat, is it appropriate to ask about this in the interview process? It's appropriate to ask about basically anything that concerns you about the company, really. Like, and if the questions that you're asking, the company is like not responding well at all to those questions, like you're allowed to ask them. Like the response they give you is just as important as the tone of the response. So, if y'all have further questions on this, please feel free to ask. I can send you, links to other chats that we've had on this subject, stuff that'll get you more information. So please feel free. We are about halfway through right now. So if you do have questions, make sure you get them in. And I will try to keep us moving and keep us getting to as many questions as possible. Gary also chimed in the chat saying families are all different. Comparing Leave It to Beaver with Married with Children, some families are going to be a little more dysfunctional than others. And that's a very good point, y'all. Like you can have a team that's like family without it being toxic. Just hear it and think. That's all we're saying. All right. So when you're talking about that interview process and asking these questions, a lot of people then want to know, should you just take the word of the person you're talking to? So do you think that it is all advisable to reach out to current employees to ask these questions? If so, would you do that through an HR, through the recruiter, or would you go, onto LinkedIn and find someone? Have you ever done this?
I would not just go onto LinkedIn and find someone, because I think I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I would definitely ask like the HR person, and especially if you have like specific concerns and you're like, I want to talk to more people on the team because I'm going to be working directly with them all the time, and I want to make sure that this is like a good environment for me. Then I think most of the time people will say, yeah, sure. I definitely asked in interviews before, like, could I speak with another person on the team that I'm going to be working with, just to get like a better feel for company culture and things like that. But I personally wouldn't like reach out on LinkedIn just to a random employee.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of in the same boat. I have reached out to random employees, but only when I didn't get an answer from the HR person. Like I would ask like, hey, is there somebody from the team that I can talk to, blah, blah, blah. And like, generally it's been the places that I really regretted working, but like those are the that's the kind of experience, at least personally, that I've had. I can't speak to anybody else's experience. But yeah, like it is something that is important to ask about. It's important to be thinking. And if they don't want you to talk to anybody, why is that?
Yeah. I think most places will say sure, because they want to make sure that it's a good fit for both of you. And you don't want to be like in a situation where you don't enjoy like your job. So I think it's important, through the whole
Oh, yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and especially with something like you said, like asking about the company culture,
Mhm.
that leaves there's a lot of room for interpretation in that question.
Yeah.
So yeah, like ask about the parts that are important to you. Like if you are a single parent, ask what the support is like for working parents. If
Yeah.
you are, and these are things that like, I feel like, I don't think it's like this anymore. Please tell me if I'm wrong. I'm only 36. I was still told well into my 30s to not wear my wedding ring to interviews because you'll get sidetracked and they'll assume that if you're married, you're either on the mommy track or already on the mommy track.
Oh,
and so
yikes.
you won't get as much of a close look. So hopefully we've moved past this and into a point where obviously you don't have to, disclose things that that hiring managers are not legally allowed to ask, but really thinking about that in terms of, is this something that's important to you that you want support in that area? Better to know in advance before you go and on board and go through all this stuff and then are right back having to look for another job because the place is not going to support you in the ways you need. So
yeah, definitely. Wow, that's horrible. I've heard stories like that, but I didn't. Yeah. Oh, that's bad.
It's bonkers. Yeah. Welcome to the Midwest. It is wild here. All right. So I'm going to keep going on questions, but please feel free, share them in the chat. So that way we can keep answering your questions. All right, Ashley, what is your advice on identifying companies that practice performative diversity versus those that have taken on real action in their DEIB practices? And maybe to start us off here, like when we're talking about performative diversity, could you give us some examples of that? If not, I can. I can jump in and give you a couple, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page in case anybody who's here maybe isn't familiar.
I feel like an example is if there's like a super big company, for example, like I'm half Asian. And so it's still going on right now, but all the anti-Asian, like, and the attacks and stuff were happening. I think a lot of big companies put out a statement where they were like, we stand with Asian Americans. You're like, super cool. What are you doing about it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where are the resources? Like, are you putting money towards like certain funds, like things like that? So yeah, I think, yeah. And also I feel like women in tech has become such a big like buzzword nowadays, and specifically like diversity for women in tech. But a lot of companies, yes, will just put it on their website and be like, yes, we care about diversity. But then if you ask them about it, they don't have any like roadmaps in place. They don't have plans in place to improve diversity. Like, yes, that's what my definition is of it.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly what Ashley said, anything where you are putting up a good face, but there's not really much behind it. Or if the diversity is, if the discussion around diversity is more in terms of like, aren't we doing so great? As opposed to we're still working. We will always be working.
So, yeah, I think that's a really important distinction is like, is there progress still being made? And like, what are the plans? Because it's really important for them to have plans in place. If they just say like, oh, I don't know, then you're like, okay, that's not great.
Yeah. All right. So in talking in terms of, companies that have taken real action in their DEIB practices, are there any bullet points of like, like that this would be a good thing, or this is something I've seen that's been, an action that would make me trust in that process? So like Powerfly, it was not a thing with us before 2020, but now every year on Juneteenth, we take a company-wide, worldwide shutdown. Everybody does. It's a thing. And that's what, that's one of the ways that we are trying to change the conversation, at least internally at Powerfly, because we always have work to do, y'all. We're not just sitting here in an ivory tower. We are constantly doing the work. So, it's something that like really was important to us. And so that was a change that we made so that, this was something that was getting recognized and talked about, and it was worldwide and not just American centric. Has there been anything that Plex has done that you've been particularly like, yes, love it. We love to see it.
I might like let Matt jump in for a second. Do you want to have a little, because I feel like you know more logistics than I do.
We've tried to stay as non US centric as possible by we are global. I mean, while 60% of our employees are in the US, I think about 40% are outside of the US. So we address a lot of those things by having unlimited or flexible PTO. So if someone wants to take a day off for whatever holiday they want to, it's up to them. So while we don't officially all represent Juneteenth, we are planning on if anybody wants to take that off, they just take it off.
I love that. I think that's great. And you're right. This is more of a thing that I feel like companies they're both struggling with and finding success with, the idea of trying to discuss this in a non-US centric, like not just US centric, right? Not like excluding the rest of the planet. And so I think that is really important to talk about, especially when you have a global workforce. The morning after after abortion was overturned, I woke up to tons of messages from so many of my coworkers from around the world who were like, this is scary. I'm very worried for you. And like, that was important, right? It was nice to know that everybody was kind of on the same page, that we're all supporting each other, even if it's something that doesn't necessarily impact us personally. So I think that was really, really wonderful to see. Okay, so we have a couple more questions going in the chat here, so I'm going to keep going through these. All right, Joel had asked, how do you keep on applying after facing multiple rejections? So when it comes to that resiliency, do you have tips for somebody who is, in the middle of that job hunt and getting a lot of no's?
It's a numbers game. I've talked with so many people about this, and I went through it myself. I don't even know how many applications I must have submitted, especially like for my first job right out of college. I graduated also like during the pandemic time, so that was also fun.
So fun.
So fun. But I must have applied to like 75 different companies. And the thing is like maybe half of those you get to like a technical interview, right? Or like you have the HR call, then you have a technical interview. And then like another half of those you get to like the next stage. And then by the time you get down to offers, it's like 3, you know what I mean? Or 4 out of those like 75. And I think I've had like a lot of people tell me that they've been disheartened by getting like a lot of no's. And honestly, yes, it sucks. And it feels like a blow to your confidence because it feels like it's directly about you, which I guess it kind of is, but actually it's really not. And yeah, I think you just have to keep like applying. It really does. It does suck, but that's just how it goes. I know I talked to some people and they were like, oh, I feel really rejected after like getting a bunch of no's. I was like, how many places did you apply to? They're like 5. I was like, you can't do that. Like, that's just not the way it works. So,
yes.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point, and I was guilty of this as well, because like you start researching and you don't want to have to research 100 companies, right? You start going and you find like 5 that you really like, and that's what you start applying to. And I understand, right? Because you're really excited. But if you do approach it in more of a shotgun capacity, apologies for the hideous metaphor, but if you do approach it from that kind of like just numbers game, like plays, you do have to apply to a lot. So you don't have to be like absolutely in love with every single company. If you are getting it narrowed down, then you can keep researching after you kind of skim over the places that said no initially. So I mean, I think that is really interesting and important to know here. All right, what else? So Joel had a couple other follow-ups here, but the biggest ones I want to talk about, they asked, when it comes to interviewing, how did you get comfortable with that? So you graduated less than 3 years ago. How did you hit that ground running when it came to interviewing? Was this like, a learning curve for you, or was it something that came really naturally?
No, I don't think. I would say it's very rare, like specifically in tech, if for a technical interview to come naturally to anyone. It's something that you have to like practice and do a lot of preparation for. So I did an internship before I got like my first job. So that helped me a little bit, but also internships are like way smaller scale. You don't have to know as much. And honestly, I think like going back to however many companies like I ended up interviewing with, every single one of them is practice. So I would like do an interview. If it didn't go well, then I would go back and I would like review my answers. But specifically talking about the technical interview, I know there's like LeetCode problems out there. There's like hacker ranks. Honestly, I have like a little bit of beef with technical interviews because I feel like they don't always display your skills super well. I like a take-home assignment because I feel like that allows you to demonstrate like your skills better. I don't love it when companies want you to write like perfect code, like runnable code in a Google Doc, because I'm like, that's not realistic. You'll never be coding like that ever. So yeah, I just said a lot of things about technical. I have a lot of opinions about the technical interview process.
Hey, no. I think this is why we asked you here, was for your opinions. So yeah, I think that's a really good like kind of intro on like what, a very good, addressing of this question. And thank you, Joel. Those were really amazing questions as well. Joel's other question was, what job boards did you use to apply? So for this one, I absolutely want to know your answer, but I also want to field it to the group here. What other job boards are y'all on? Obviously I don't think any of us at Power to Fly think that you're only searching through us. So, what other places are you trying? What have you seen success with? Ashley, when you started looking, what was your, kind of go-to? What platform or where were you looking?
I started on Glassdoor, but I would never apply through Glassdoor. I'd always go to the company's website and then apply there. Obviously I had like a list of companies that I wanted to work for, and then I would just immediately like apply to their website and search for open roles. Grace Hopper was another tool that I utilized. So you can like submit your resume and then you can also attend it. They did it virtually. So that was actually how I got like my first job, was through Grace Hopper, which was really cool. And then also like Women Who Code has a great job board that you can filter through. And they do, I'm pretty sure for almost every posting they put on there the salary, which is also really nice, and benefits, which I think is very important. So yeah, all those, but I did start with Glassdoor and then I filtered down, and I just never applied through Glassdoor because I think applications are better if it's through the company website.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. And honestly, that's one of the things with Power to Fly that like, we encourage people to apply through our website. There's a couple other like, benefits that you do get. There's somebody from the Power to Fly team that keeps checking with the hiring teams to make sure everything's moving along. We're imperfect people who build these systems. So there's going to be cracks, and that's something that we try and, kind of help cover, help, pave over some of those cracks for people. But yeah, I mean, like it's also completely understandable that, people come to applications via different routes. And, sometimes it's just easier to apply in a specific platform for you. So yeah. Okay. I don't know that we'll be able to touch on this one. Let's see. I'm going to keep searching for questions in the chat, y'all. Some of the questions are a little bit off topic for us, but I'm trying to send y'all answers in the chat as well. So if you've got questions, please keep sending them in here. Performative, there we go. All right, so let's talk about allyship. What are some practical and like real world ways in which allies can help support underrepresented talent in the workplace? Has there been anything that you've experienced that people have done for you, or something that you've seen people do for others? That has been an impactful use of allyship?
Yeah. So one thing that I actually really love is when you're in a meeting and maybe like you go off mute for a second because you have something you want to say, but maybe a lot of people are talking. Maybe there's a lot of like strong voices in the situation. And there's a guy in one of my meetings, and he does this great thing where like, if I go off mute, he'll say like, Ashley, did you have something to add? Which I think is so nice, because it's like creating space for you when maybe you didn't feel like you were able to speak up. Also like hand raising on Google Meets or Zoom or whatever you're using, I think is also really useful, because then you have the space to talk and you don't have to just like interject or like interrupt someone. And it can be kind of hard on like virtual meetings to feel the flow and stuff like that of the meeting. So I found that's really helpful. I know that can also be a little stressful for getting called on, but when you've unmuted yourself, you kind of want to talk, I think. So yeah.
No, I love that advice. Okay, so let's talk about what it's like to work in a male dominated field. Or at least, if you are a man, if you are what it would be like to work in a field where most of the people in the room do not look like you. When it comes to being in those situations, do you have any tips on making sure that you still feel empowered in that, in that setting, as opposed to feeling othered, feeling isolated, feeling like, you can't really make an impact? Are there any things that you found that work for you?
I feel like it's tricky because I feel like it's a pretty constant thing of like feeling included and feeling like your voice is like appreciated and heard. I really like affirmations personally, like I belong here, like I'm smart, I'm capable. I think that helps me a lot, but I think it is really tricky. Yeah, I think it's like tricky to handle when you're feeling like you're not appreciated or you're not valued, then your mental health is like not great around that. But yeah, if it's like a real problem, I think it'd be worth it to talk to whoever is like higher up, like your manager or somebody. And then honestly, like if nothing changes, I think sometimes you just have to like find a new environment, because it's not good for you. It's like not good for your brain. It's not good for your career growth. Like at a certain point, I think you just have to be like, okay, I'm letting go of that.
Yeah, I like that. All right. So on the flip side of that, a lot of people asked if you had any tips to manage your emotions when you're dealing with a toxic or a non-inclusive environment. So let's say you're stuck, you can't change, because obviously, like, I feel like that's also something we talk about a lot, is like, well, maybe you need to find a new place. And also, y'all, we just want you to understand, we know not everyone is resourced enough to be able to make these choices, right? Some of us are between a rock and a hard place, and it sucks, for lack of a better term. If you are in one of those situations where you can't, leaving is not an option, there's not any other way. Have you seen any tips, or have there been anything that you've unfortunately had to utilize to kind of make the most or get through a situation or a setting like that?
I was also gonna say, I never really love the phrase like managing our emotions, because I think it's often we're told like we're too emotional, when like really we're just being like passionate and acting the exact same as men are acting, but because we're women, we're being told that we're emotional. So I don't love that. But I think it is like really helpful in those situations to have people that you can lean on and who have gone through the same experiences. Unfortunately, not to make a blanket statement, but I feel like most women in tech have been through the same things. And so you will speak to somebody and then they will like validate your feelings, maybe tell you how they handled it, how they like were able to maybe not even overcome it, but just like deal with it for the current moment if you can't like make a change right now. But yeah, I don't know. It's really, it sucks. Like, I think we've all been there and it's really bad.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
So I didn't get this from a racism aspect, but mine was more gendered in a previous job that I had. And just, if I wish I had done differently, so maybe learn from my experience. But what I wish I had done is, instead of just kind of being quiet when I was shut down about something, like I was literally told that I didn't need a raise because my husband's salary should be able to take care of us. Seriously, y'all, this was 2017. Okay. This was not 1942. Yikes. I'm old, but I'm not that old. But like, so like being told this and knowing I did not have another option, this is where I had to work. It was a 5-person company. I was never going to get away from this person. Like the one thing that I wish I had done was just stand firm in my boundaries. And even if they were not being respected, to not stop talking about them. And not in a like, I'm upset, no one listens to me, blah, 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 but just being like, well, you didn't listen the last time I told you to do blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I told you 3 weeks ago, I really don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
Like, and it's hard. Don't get me wrong, y'all. It is hard. It's easy to say this now with the benefit of, 2020 hindsight, all that good stuff. But like, truly, like, even if you're not getting what you want and what you need, that doesn't mean you have to stop asking for it.
Yeah. I think it's so hard to like advocate for yourself and like keep speaking up even after you know that the conversation is not going to change. But it is important because like you're still experiencing those emotions and stuff, and you should be able to like vocalize it. Yeah.
No, I think that's sadly something that's not different yet, but we, it's like the conversation around mental health, right? Like we don't change the conversation by continuing to not talk about it.
Yeah.
So I think that, especially when it comes to how you're being treated, like speak up.
Yeah.
Like stand firm. You deserve decent treatment. You deserve equal treatment to everyone else. Like, these are things that, at least for me, I think of it in terms of like, would I let someone do this to my friend?
Yeah.
If not, that kind of helps me feel a little bit more like driven to do something about it or to say something about it on my own behalf. So maybe that'll work for y'all.
Yeah.
All right. So one person had written in saying, as a woman in tech, I always feel the need to prove that I'm capable. Do you have any advice on how to perform our best while avoiding going down that imposter syndrome rabbit hole? So I think this is a really good question. You know, like people, you start off with that feeling like you talked about earlier that, you know, you're worried that you don't know as much, or you don't know as much as everyone in the room. But it can really easily slide into either model minority territory or overworking yourself to, you know, to try and measure up to people that are continuously going to kind of cut you down a little bit or underestimate you. So how have you dealt with this?
I feel like I'm still dealing with that. I think the problem is, like you're saying, like a lot of women in tech, you feel the need, like you don't want to just prove yourself. You want to prove that, like, I don't know, you're almost representing like women in tech as a whole. So you want to be like the best to prove that like we belong in this industry and all this stuff, which is really difficult. Honestly, I don't know. I still have like imposter syndrome really bad. And I don't know how to fix that. I like my affirmations. That works for me. I think that helps me a lot. But yeah.
No, I think that's great. I mean, I don't do affirmations. I have like feel good pump up songs that like have good lyrics that are kind of an affirmation, you know? Because there's something about like telling myself in the mirror makes me feel real cringe, which is dumb. Like it's me by myself in my bathroom. The dogs are not judging me. Like who cares? But like that, like I can't get behind affirmations, but I can absolutely do that. Power pose, like the superhero power stance, y'all.
Yeah.
Seriously, it releases chemicals from your brain. Like truly, it makes you feel like jacked up and ready to go, like fight crime or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's one of those things that I feel like you're right. A lot of us still struggle with, and most people that have imposter syndrome, you don't ever really beat it, right? Like it's still going to flare or, you know, like, you know, kind of hit you. It doesn't mean you have to listen to it. Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I also, one thing that my sister actually told me about was that you should have like a brag document. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah. So it's basically where you like keep a list of like all the things that you've accomplished. Also really good for like when you talk with your manager at the end of the, like if you're looking for a raise or like a promotion or stuff like that, then you already have this whole like comprehensive list, but also just makes you feel really good to look at it and be like, look, I know what I'm doing. These are all the things that I've done. Like, it's good to, do that.
No, I think that's wonderful advice. A couple jobs back, I had a manager that said the same thing, and like encouraged us to create like a kudos folder in your email. And that way, if you got, a real great, like, if you got praise for a project on a giant thread, you could just forward the thread into your kudos box, or you could, kind of like set up a sifting rule, sorting, something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Filtering. Thank you. It's rough, man. When English is the only language you speak and you still don't have it down like that, it's a rough day. But yeah, I love that idea because like you said, it's great for days when that imposter syndrome is kicking up, but it's also incredibly useful for those discussions around like, hey, it's raise time. It's bonus time. Guess who's really cool and a rock star? I have a whole bunch of emails that say it's me. Like I think that's awesome. Love that. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. I want to get one more question through, and then we do want to go over some questions that we had asked you about Plex. So last question here. What is your number one piece of advice for underrepresented professionals who are forging their own path within the tech field? What is something that if you leave here today and you only remember one thing, what do you want that thing to be?
I think advocating for yourself is like the biggest thing that you could possibly do for yourself, especially when you're first starting out. And I think it's really difficult because oftentimes you feel like I'm bragging or like I'm being too, you know what I mean? Or I'm overplaying myself. It's not true. Like you should be like advocating for yourself because nobody else is going to do it for you. So like, if you're at your first job or something, messaging in your team chat when you finish like something big and saying like, hey, I just did this is so great. And I think that's really important to do. And yeah, I don't know. I think we should all just hype ourselves up a little bit more. I think that's important.
Yes. Yeah. I'm telling you, I mean, obviously we can't quote most of the song because it's wildly inappropriate, but like Megan Thee Stallion says, you should look in the mirror and think, I don't brag enough.
Yeah.
So true. She's got a Grammy and a college diploma. Like, I'm just saying, she's doing some things right. She knows what she's got going on. Like,
great
follow
points.
the advice.
I love that. I love that.
All right. Okay. So let's go in here and we're going to talk about this slide. So what y'all have on you right now, this is some questions that we had asked Ashley prior to today's session when we wanted to talk about Plex. So let's talk about the culture at Plex. You know, this is something that we touched on, was like a little bit of like a broad question to ask, but we asked you, how would you describe the culture? Walk us through your response. Embodying those Plex values, why do you think those values stand out?
So I think it's really important, specifically at Plex, because we have these values and people actually embody them. I know a lot of companies have values and they just like put them up on their pages and then they forget about them. We are sure to like keep these in mind whenever we even do reviews and stuff like that. So specifically, being like kind, humble, and helpful. When I first joined, I know whenever you join a company, they're always like, hey, ask a lot of questions and people will like be super open to that. It's not always true, but honestly, like at Plex, every time I reach out to someone, they're like, oh yeah, feel free to throw like 30 minutes on the calendar. They're so nice. They're so like willing to help you out. They're really like considerate. They're kind, like all of these amazing things. I just think it's like a really great group of people, to be honest. So
that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Now, your favorite part about working at Plex is, you know, seeing that direct impact on the product. Can you give us an example of something that you've seen happen that was really satisfying for you?
Yeah. So basically my team does a lot of work. We just launched, I don't know how many of y'all know that, but we just launched like Discover Together. So now we have things in place where there's a little bit more of like sharing and kind of building like your friends and things like that. That's been really, really cool to see launch. And I just love how much we care about the users. Like in all of our discussions that we're having, we're always talking about the user and like, how can we be sure to improve this product for them and create like really cool new features that they'll be using. And like, as an example, we rolled something out and it was something that I directly worked on, and it went out to like, obviously every single person sees the app, but this was like a specific pop-up that every single user was going to get. And that was so cool to think about. Like every single person that uses like the Plex app is going to see this thing that I created. I just think that's really neat. I love that.
That is really cool. I love that. I mean, it, honestly, like, granted, it's on a much smaller scale, but like the first time I posted a social post for Power to Fly, I felt the same way, where it was like, I did this thing.
Yeah. And everyone can see it. So cool. Yeah. No, I agree.
3 people like it. That's 3 more than liked it 12 seconds ago. 3 people, they like it. Like that was like what I was feeling. Like, and so I absolutely relate to that. And I think it's gotta be wonderful, you know, to work so hard and then see how it actually like it impacts the users. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. Your top tips for someone who's interviewing. You know, one of the things we touched on was interview the company just as much as they're interviewing you. Is there a question that you always ask when you're interviewing?
Oh my gosh, since it's been a while. I used to have like a whole list of like little notes. No, I always asked about work-life balance. Oh, one thing I love to ask is, what is like the favorite part of your job? And then what is something that's like a little bit more difficult? I won't say like your least favorite part of the job. I would try to phrase it a little bit better than that. But I think that's really important, because when people are really passionate about their work, it will show. Like they should be able to instantly tell you, like, I love this part about my job. I have had lots of interviews where I ask, what's the favorite part of your job? And they just don't have something. And I'm like, well, that's not great, because clearly you don't love it that much. So yeah, I just think it's important, because this is like, it's such a big commitment. Your job is a lot of your life, and it will be for probably like, I don't know how people switch jobs a lot now, but for a while.
Well, like, but I mean, we're all going to be working longer than, you know, than previous generations. So yeah, it makes sense.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Yeah, that's true, unfortunately. But yeah, just make sure that you're asking like every single question that you want to ask. And honestly, it's great because it shows a lot of curiosity too to the interviewer, that like you're passionate and you want to know more about the company. You want to see if it's a good fit for both of you.
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. Y'all, please feel free to steal my questions. I always ask, what's the biggest part of the company that you are excited to see change? Like what's the next big change up in line for the company? And then my other one is, what is the company activity that employees enjoy the most? Like what's something fun that y'all do for your company, for your workers, that they love. Because everybody has something, right? Even if it's just like, well, we do a barbecue once a year or something like that. Like everybody has something, but it also kind of gives you that idea of like, is this a company culture where they're going to like expect you to go to happy hour and stuff, and that's their big thing? Or is this maybe a company culture where like they're constantly showing their employees that they are appreciated, or they're very much supportive and trying to make work a fun place as well as, a workplace. Like, these kinds of things can sort of help you parse out maybe a little bit more about the org. But yeah. All right. We are a minute over. Apologies, y'all. I do try to keep us on time and respect everyone's calendars, but I just want to take a minute here before we leave to say a big thank you to Ashley and Matt. Thank you to you as well for spending time with us and jumping in to help us with some of these questions. Ashley, I have loved getting to get to know you and learn from you this afternoon. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. And we're so grateful that you took time to share your expertise with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so great. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you had a good time. Also, another huge thank you, as always, goes out to our audience. These sessions wouldn't exist without you. I would not have a job without you. So obviously, I love that you come to these events. But even more so for each of you, y'all took time out of your day now to do something for yourselves. Okay, that is huge. You should pat yourself on the back. That is amazing. Not everybody is able to do that. And you all just did it. You just did it. You took an hour out of your day to try and do something that was beneficial to you. So congratulations to all of you for that. Thank you so much for choosing us to spend the time with. And I can't wait to see many more of you back on future events. So have a safe, happy, healthy rest of your Tuesday. And we cannot wait to see you in the future. Yeah, that's it.